Hey there, ever wanted to make your own video game music? Today we're breaking down how to write a Pokémon style track in the style of Ever Grande City. So get comfortable, relax, drop me a like as it really helps support the channel, and let's get into it. Okay, I won't play the reference track. I presume that you probably already know this track if you've clicked on this video. If not, go and check out Ever Grande City from Pokémon Omega or Ruby Alpha Sapphire. And what we're going to do is not recreate it. We're going to make something similar to. So if you are working for people who want you to make their video game, they'll often ask you for something similar to this track or similar to that track. Or if you're making your own video game and you go, oh, I'd really like a track that's similar to Ever Grande City or something, then you want to use a reference track and work out what elements it is that makes that track sound like that track. So this is just going to be the drums and the bass of the intro. And you can hear that chromatic little thing throughout the reference track. And we've got here just going C, C sharp, what's that, F, and then going up F sharp and G. So it sounds like that with just the bass, and then match it up with horn. And then finally the piano, which, let's unsolo this now, have a look at this. So first we've got the C chord, then we've got a G sharp major chord, followed by an F chord, and then we're just keeping that major chord going up a semitone, so up to F sharp, and finally ending on G. So it sounds like this again. And that's your intro. Now let's actually write the main piece of music. So I've just put down a verse, and we have got a rhythm that sounds like this. And just to go over that, we have got a swing rhythm on the quantize. So I presume most of you know what quantize is, but if you don't, it's just pulling the notes towards the grid. And this has got the grid slightly offset. So instead of it going tat, 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 it's going tat, 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 tat. Hopefully that makes sense, but we can probably see it a little bit here. Yeah, we can see here it's pulled it just left of the beat. So it's almost like a trip. But the bass is still very much on the beat, apart from the last hit of each bar. And that was just me outlining the chords essentially with the bass line. So the next thing to do is get the actual chords, which I put down on the piano. And we have got... And just for simplicity's sake, we can say that we started on a C chord there, and all we've done is lowered the root note down to B and then B flat. So you're just keeping that C chord throughout, apart from the actual C is moving down chromatically, until we reach its next chord, which is just an F major chord. And for those of you who can see what I'm doing there, I have just gone up now to D minor and essentially done exactly the same thing. I've just done the D minor chord, and then the chord, the fifth and the third stays the same, but it's the D that moves down chromatically. So it's essentially just your chords. Let's go to a piano, shall we? Your chords. Let's go to a... And then we're just doing exactly the same thing on a D. If you play like Mario music or probably Pokemon and other Nintendo music, you'll often hear that sort of thing happening. And at the end, we have got, just to round it off, which is just the F and the G chord, which will loop it back round to the C. So let's have a listen to that again. And then I put on some leads, which sound like this. Okay, and we'll have a listen to that in context. So you can see I've kept the rhythm of the lead very simple. It's just long, short, 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 long, short, 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 and then a little fill here just going down. But then the same again, so long, short, 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 long, short, 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 long, and then a fill. And you'll often see with my fills I either go up at the end or down at the end. Nothing too bad there, but then we've got this bell. And for those of you who know the original track will know that there's lots of bells all the way through it. So that is what I did. Now a variation, just quickly. If you could tap the thumbs up button, it would really help me out. If you have any questions or suggestions for future tracks you'd like me to make, pop them down below. And just so you know, there are already dozens of tutorials on this channel to help you become a video game composer, with many more coming each week, so feel free to get subscribed. Right, back to it. Right, so it's the same chords, but we've just got a couple of different things happening here. So firstly, the bells, which is just like tubular bells, or church bells maybe, which in context without the horns sounds like this. And the other bit I added was the horns, which sounds like this. Which is sort of like a question with the lead sound and then a response with the horns, and together it sounds like this. So just there you can see that every time this note is long, so when this is a long note, that is when the horns are doing their job. So let's have a listen again. So you can hear that when that is doing multiple notes, we've got a long note on the horns and vice versa. And then this little bit here is playing the same rhythm, but just a harmony of the notes on the lead sound. So second time round, very similar on the horns. And that note choice there is just to lead it onto a second section. Good. Yeah, if you've got any questions when I'm doing more complicated tracks like this, then please pop them down below and I'll try to get back to you. The main thing there is just when one is doing something simple, the other one is doing their complicated bit. Not that it's that complicated, but yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Right, let's do the next section. So the bass is just going A, G, F. And then A, G, and C, which is basically the outline of the chord progression. And then with the piano, now, as you can probably hear, the bass line there is playing an A. But the first chord of this is not an A, it is a C. And for those of you who know, that means that it's an A minor 7 chord. So that's going to be, let's just put that down, A, C, E and G. So the whole chord progression is kind of made up of 7th chords like that. That one, but yeah. Yeah, and that's a bit of a weird one because I'm keeping the same chord there on this B flat major chord, but the bass line is moving. We could always go into music theory at a later date, but I don't want to go too much into depth here. If you're very interested, we could maybe do a separate video on that sort of thing. Right, the horns are just going to be, let me just glue this together, flatten that out. So whistle. And finally the strings, so which is kind of the main melody more than the horns, and together. A slight variation going up here. Good. I don't think we need to do much more than that on this track. The main thing here is when we loop it back round, we are going to have to bear in mind that it won't loop back round to the intro. Well, it sort of can, but what I would usually suggest if you're making your own game or if you're doing it with a client, you loop it back round to the verse 1. So you can do that in multiple ways. You can bounce out the intro separately from the main piece and you can just have this as a loop, or you can do a bounce down of the whole piece once and then the second time round just the bounce down of this section that is currently highlighted, and then in your game engine you would then just tell it to play that once with the intro and then once without the intro, on loop without the intro. Good, let's have a one listen the whole way through, and whilst we're listening, put down any questions or comments below. Okay, I think that sounds not exactly like the original by any means, but it's got enough elements from it. Again, if you need to go and listen to that on YouTube and then come back and re-watch this video, hopefully it will make more sense now. But yeah, it's not too much going on, but it sounds like a nice little jaunty piece that could work in any village scene, I would say, in a RPG game. Right, questions, pop them down below. Comments, also pop them down below. If you could give us a thumbs up, that would really help. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.